Hello, friends, and welcome back to Book Divers. I want to start today by asking you a very personal question. A question that you don't have to answer out loud, but I want you to answer it honestly in the quiet of your own mind. When was the last time you felt truly, vividly alive? I don't mean just awake. I don't mean just functioning. I mean that electric feeling where your heart beats a little faster, your senses sharpen, and time seems to slow down. That feeling where you know with absolute certainty that you are writing your own story, not just reading lines from a script someone else wrote for you. For most of us, if we're being honest, that memory is a long way back. We live in a culture that is obsessed with safety. From the moment we are born, we are taught to avoid danger at all costs. We are told to study hard, get a stable job with benefits, save for retirement, drive the speed limit, and never, ever rock the boat. We build these comfortable little boxes for ourselves. We fill them with streaming services, delivery apps, and predictable routines. We call this living. But often, late at night, when the house is quiet and the distractions are gone, it feels more like existing. There is a silent epidemic in our society today. It isn't a virus. It isn't a disease. It is the epidemic of the comfort zone. It is the slow, quiet tragedy of potential that is never realized because of one single paralyzing emotion: fear. Today, we are going to challenge that fear. We are going to deep dive into a book that might just be the key to unlocking the cage you've built around yourself. We are exploring The Art of Risk by Richard Harris. Now, before you click away, let me clarify something. This is not a video about skydiving or gambling your life savings in Vegas or driving without a seatbelt. That isn't risk. That is stupidity. Real risk, the art of risk, is something different. It is the science of courage. It is the biological and psychological toolkit that allows ordinary people to do extraordinary things. To understand this book, we aren't just going to look at bullet points on a screen. We are going to follow a story. We are going to follow the journey of a man named Ethan. Ethan is fictional, but his struggle is real. Ethan represents you. He represents me. He represents every single person who has ever looked in the mirror on a Monday morning and thought, "Is this all there is?" So please, put your phone on silent, grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's walk a mile in Ethan's shoes.
Chapter 1. The Gray Loop. Let me paint a picture of Ethan's life. Ethan was 32 years old. He lived in a sensible apartment in the suburbs of Chicago. He was a good guy. He was responsible. He paid his taxes early. He called his mother every Sunday evening. He had a job as a logistics coordinator, a job that paid the bills, offered dental insurance, and completely bored him to tears. Ethan's life was a straight line, no peaks, no valleys, just a long, flat horizon. He had a routine that ran like a computer program. Wake up at 6:30 a.m., shower, coffee, commute, work, commute, microwave dinner, 2 hours of television, sleep, repeat. It was safe, it was predictable, it was exactly what he was supposed to do. But inside, Ethan felt like he was fading. It was a physical sensation, a heaviness in his chest, a gray fog that seemed to wrap around his brain. He was drowning on dry land. It was a Tuesday in November, a cold, rainy evening, when the crack in the armor finally appeared. Ethan was walking home from the train station. He was huddled under his umbrella, trying to keep his shoes dry, when he passed a small, independent bookstore. He had walked past this shop 1,000 times and never stopped, but tonight the rain was coming down hard, and he ducked under the store's awning to adjust his coat. Right there, on a clearance table outside, sat a book with a bright yellow cover. It looked out of place against the gray pavement. The Art of Risk, the new science of courage, caution, and chance. Ethan picked it up. He almost laughed out loud. Risk, he thought bitterly. I'm the man who checks the stove 3 times before I leave the house. I don't do risk. But he turned the book over and read the back cover. The author, Richard Harris, wasn't talking about adrenaline junkies. He was asking a question. Are you living your life, or are you just managing your fears? That sentence hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. He bought the book. He went home, sat in his beige armchair, turned off the TV, and opened to Chapter 1. The title of the first chapter was Embrace Carefully Managed Risks. As Ethan began to read, he felt like the author was speaking directly to him. Harris explained that human beings are biologically wired to be cowards. It's not our fault, it's evolution. Thousands of years ago, if you heard a rustle in the bushes and you assumed it was the wind, but it was actually a tiger, you died. If you assumed it was a tiger, but it was just the wind, you survived. Our brains evolved to treat everything like a tiger. But here's the problem. In modern life, there are no tigers. Asking for a raise isn't a tiger. Starting a business isn't a tiger. Speaking up in a meeting isn't a tiger. But our brains react the same way. We sweat, our heart races, we freeze, we run away. Ethan read a story in the book about elite big wave surfers. To the average person, riding a 50-foot wave looks like a suicide mission. It looks reckless. But the book explained that these surfers are actually the most careful people on Earth. They study the weather charts for years, they train their lung capacity, they have safety teams on jet skis. They analyze every variable. They aren't reckless, they are calculated. Suddenly, a memory flashed in Ethan's mind, a memory he had tried to suppress. It was his senior year of college. His roommates had planned a road trip to the Grand Canyon. On the way back, they stopped at a bungee jumping site. They were all going to do it. They begged Ethan to join them. "Come on, Ethan, just one jump. It'll be legendary." But Ethan refused. He sat in the car for 2 hours, listening to the radio, terrified that the rope would snap. He told himself he was being the smart one, the mature one. But his best friend Mark did the jump. And when Mark came back to the car, his eyes were wide. He was vibrating with energy. He looked awake. For 10 years, Ethan had told himself that he made the right choice. But sitting in his apartment, reading this book, he realized the truth. Mark wasn't reckless. The company had a perfect safety record. Mark took a calculated risk and gained a memory that would last forever. Ethan had taken the safe route. And what did he have to show for it? A memory of sitting in a Honda Civic, waiting for life to happen. Ethan put the book down. He looked at his reflection in the dark window. He realized that his comfort zone wasn't protecting him, it was suffocating him.
Chapter 2. The Audit of Fear. Ethan decided to play a game with himself. The book suggested an exercise called the Risk Audit. The instruction was simple. Identify one passion you have suppressed because of fear and write down the absolute worst thing that could happen if you pursued it. Ethan grabbed a notebook. He didn't have to think hard about the passion. It was photography. Since he was a kid, Ethan had seen the world in frames. He noticed the way the morning light hit the steam rising from the subway grates. He noticed the lines on an old man's face. He wanted to be a photographer. He wanted to capture the world. But the tiger voice in his head always shut him down. You're not an artist. You're a logistics coordinator. You'll starve. Everyone has a camera on their phone. You're not special. Ethan opened his notebook. He forced himself to write it down. The risk: spend $2,000 of his savings on a professional camera and try to get freelance clients. Now, following the book's advice, he analyzed the worst-case scenario. He wrote, Fear number 1, I won't get any clients. Reaction: okay, if I don't get clients, I keep my day job. I still have a camera I can use for fun. Consequence: my ego is bruised, my bank account is intact. Fear number 2, I lose the money. Reaction: The camera has resale value. I could sell it for maybe $1,500. Real cost. The risk is actually only about $500. Question. Can I afford to lose $500 to chase a dream I've had for 20 years? Ethan stared at the paper. When he wrote it down, the tiger looked like a kitten. The fear was mostly smoke. The financial ruin he imagined was actually just a minor expense. The next day, Ethan did something that made his hands shake. He walked into a camera store. He swiped his credit card. He bought a professional DSLR body and a prime lens. For the next few weeks, Ethan felt a shift. He started waking up early, not because he had to, but because he wanted to catch the golden hour light before work. He took photos of the city. He took photos of his cat. He took photos of strangers in the park. He felt a spark. The gray fog in his chest began to lift. This is what neuroscientists call the dopamine delta. It's the brain rewarding you for novelty and challenge. Ethan was finally feeding his brain what it was starving for. But then came the test. His friend Sarah called him on a Thursday night. She sounded frantic. She was crying. "Ethan," she sobbed, "I'm in so much trouble. The photographer for my sister's wedding just canceled. He got sick. The wedding is this Saturday. I know you bought that nice camera. Can you please fill in?" Ethan froze. Taking pictures of a park bench is one thing. A wedding? That is the most important day of someone's life. There are no do-overs at a wedding. If he missed the kiss or if the photos were blurry, he wouldn't just be embarrassed, he would ruin a friendship. His brain screamed, "Run, say no, tell her you're busy, stay safe." But he looked at the book on his nightstand. He remembered the lesson. Confidence comes from preparation. He took a deep breath. "I'll do it, Sarah." The next 48 hours, Ethan didn't sleep. But he didn't just worry, he worked. This is the difference between anxiety and preparation. He watched hours of YouTube tutorials on wedding photography. He made a shot list of every photo he needed to take. He visited the venue to check the lighting. He bought backup batteries and backup memory cards. Saturday arrived. He stood in the church, his camera in his hand. He was sweating. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He was terrified. But then, the music started. The bride began to walk down the aisle. He lifted the camera to his eye, and something miraculous happened. The fear vanished. He entered what psychologists call flow state. The world narrowed down to the viewfinder. He wasn't thinking about failure. He was thinking about aperture, shutter speed, and composition. He was moving, directing, capturing. He was alive. A week later, he sent the edited photos to Sarah. He sat by his phone, waiting for the angry text, waiting for the criticism. The phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. "Ethan, oh my God, these are incredible. You caught the look on my dad's face when he saw her. We didn't even see that. You are amazing." Ethan sat back in his chair and exhaled a breath he felt like he had been holding for 10 years. He realized that the risk wasn't the enemy. The enemy was his own hesitation. He had risked failure, yes, but in return, he had gained a victory that redefined who he was.
Chapter 3. Resilience is a muscle.
Ethan was feeling good. He had conquered the camera. But the book wasn't done with him yet. Chapter 2 of The Art of Risk focused on resilience. Harris writes that we often think of resilience as a personality trait, something you're born with. You're either tough or you're sensitive. But the book argues that resilience is a muscle. If you lay in bed for 6 months, your leg muscles will atrophy. You won't be able to walk. Courage works the same way. If you spend your life in the comfort zone, your risk muscle atrophies. When a small challenge appears, you collapse because you haven't been training. Ethan looked at his career. This was where his muscle was weakest. He was a ghost at work. He did his job, emailed his reports, and stayed silent in meetings. Why? Because when he was in the 10th grade, he had participated in a debate competition. He had frozen on stage. He forgot his speech. The class had laughed. The shame burned so hot that he vowed never to speak publicly again. But the art of risk taught him that avoiding the pain was actually making the fear stronger. Every time he stayed silent, he was voting for his own weakness. He wrote a new goal in his notebook: speak up in the Monday morning meeting. It sounds small to some of you, but for Ethan, this was climbing Mount Everest. Monday morning came. The conference room was cold. The fluorescent lights were humming. His boss, Mr. Henderson, was presenting the quarterly logistics strategy. Ethan knew the strategy was flawed. He had seen the data. He knew there was a better route for the trucks that would save the company money. Mr. Henderson looked around the room. Does anyone have any thoughts on this route? The room went silent. This was the moment. The tiger was in the room. His palms were sweating. His throat felt like sandpaper. His brain was screaming, stay quiet, keep your head down, don't be the 10th grader who forgot his speech. But Ethan remembered the lesson. Micro risks build macro courage. You have to lift the small weights to lift the big ones. He took a breath. He raised his hand. Actually, Ethan said. His voice cracked. He sounded nervous. He didn't sound like a CEO. He sounded like a terrified logistics coordinator. But he didn't stop. Actually, looking at the fuel data from Q3, I think if we routed through the Southern District, we could save about 12%. The room was dead silent. The boss looked at him. The silence stretched for 5 seconds, which felt like 5 years. Then Mr. Henderson nodded slowly. I hadn't seen that data, Ethan. That's a good catch. Let's run the numbers. The meeting moved on. There was no applause. No confetti fell from the ceiling. It was a mundane moment. But internally, Ethan felt like he had just slain a dragon. He realized that the catastrophe he feared, being laughed at, being fired, was a hallucination. He had survived, and because he survived, his risk muscle grew a little bit stronger. He started seeking out these micro risks everywhere. He struck up a conversation with a stranger at a coffee shop. He asked for a discount on his internet bill. He tried a new route to work. He was training. And just like the gym, the heavy weights started to feel lighter.
Chapter 4. Recklessness versus Courage. Now here is where the story gets tricky. Ethan was feeling invincible. The dopamine of success was flowing. And this brings us to Chapter 3 of the book, the thin line between courage and recklessness. Harris warns that when people finally break out of their shell, they can sometimes swing too far the other way. They get addicted to the rush. They stop calculating. Ethan called his old friend, Mark, the bungee jumper, and said, "Let's go on an adventure." Mark took him to a hiking trail known as the Spine. It was a steep, narrow ridge with 1,000-foot drops on either side. It was a serious hike. Ethan thought, I'm a risk-taker now. I can handle this. But he wasn't prepared. He hadn't checked the weather. He hadn't trained his cardio. He just went. Halfway up the spine of the mountain, the wind picked up. It was howling. Ethan looked down. The cars in the parking lot looked like ants. The world began to spin. Panic set in. Real primal panic. His legs turned to jelly. He hugged the rock. I can't move. I'm going to fall. This wasn't a boardroom meeting. This was physical danger. He had crossed the line from risk-taking to recklessness. Mark stopped. He came back to Ethan. He didn't mock him. He didn't tell him to man up. He used a technique straight out of the psychology of risk. Ethan, he said firmly, listen to me. Stop looking at the summit. Stop looking at the bottom. Look at your boots. Ethan looked at his boots. Good. Now just move your right foot 6 inches forward. Can you do that? Ethan moved his foot. Good.
Now the left foot. This is called granularity. When a risk feels overwhelming, it is because we are looking at the whole mountain. Our brain cannot process the magnitude, so it shuts down. The solution is to break the risk down into the smallest possible unit, the grain of sand. You don't climb a mountain, you take one step. You don't build a business, you send one email. You don't fix a marriage, you have one conversation. Ethan narrowed his vision. He focused only on his boots. Step, breathe, step, breathe. Slowly, the panic receded. The tiger went back to sleep. 30 minutes later, the ground leveled out. He looked up. He was at the summit. The view was spectacular. The wind felt like victory, but the feeling inside him was humility. He realized that courage isn't about being fearless. Courage is about having a plan, respecting the danger, and breaking the impossible down into the possible.
Chapter 5. Failure is just data. I want to tell you that Ethan went on to become a world-famous photographer and a CEO. But that would be a lie. And here at Book Divers, we deal in truth. Emboldened by his wedding success, Ethan entered a prestigious photography contest. He submitted his best shots. He was sure he would win. The results came out a month later. He didn't win. He didn't get second place. He didn't even get an honorable mention. The old Ethan, the Ethan from the beige apartment, would have been crushed. He would have thrown his camera in the closet. He would have told himself, "See, I told you, you're a fraud. You're not special." But the new Ethan turned to Chapter 4. Failure is data. Richard Harris writes, "The most successful risk-takers don't avoid failure. They budget for it. They expect it. And most importantly, they mine it." Ethan didn't cry. He got curious. He emailed the judges. It was a bold move, but he asked, "Can you tell me why I didn't place?" One judge replied, "The feedback was harsh. Your photos have good emotion, but your technical composition is messy. You are breaking the rules of lighting without understanding them first." It stung. It hurt his ego. But Ethan treated it as data. It wasn't an insult. It was a roadmap. He realized that failure isn't the opposite of success. Failure is part of success. It is the tuition you pay to learn the lesson. He spent the next 6 months studying lighting composition. He practiced. He failed again. He fixed it. He improved. He didn't quit. He just adjusted his trajectory.
Conclusion: The Community of Risk. By the time Ethan finished the book, his life looked different. He hadn't quit his job, yet, but he was building a side income. He was speaking up in meetings, and he was being considered for a promotion. He was hiking mountains. He was awake. He realized one final lesson from the book: no one succeeds alone. Behind every risk-taker is a safety net. Ethan joined a photography club. He found a community of people who are also trying, failing, and growing. He stopped being a lone wolf and started being part of a pack. And this brings us back to you. Remember the question I asked at the beginning: when was the last time you felt alive? If you are listening to this and you feel stuck in that gray loop, if you feel like you are just waiting for something to happen, I have news for you. Nothing is going to happen unless you make it happen. The comfort zone is a lie. It promises safety, but it delivers regret. The risk, the calculated, thoughtful, brave risk, is the only path to the life you actually want. So, I have a challenge for you today. I want you to do a risk audit. I want you to identify one thing, just one, that you have been afraid to do. Is it starting a YouTube channel? Is it asking someone out on a date? Is it applying for a new job? Is it just wearing a bright-colored shirt when you usually wear gray? Write it down. Write down the worst-case scenario. Realize how small the monster actually is. And then take one step. Just look at your boots. I want you to go to the comments section right now. I want you to write down, "I am taking the risk." And if you are brave enough, tell us what that risk is. Let this community be your safety net. Let us hold you accountable. If Ethan's story resonated with you, if you saw a piece of yourself in his journey, please hit that like button. It helps us find other divers who are ready to wake up. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Book Divers. We don't just read books here, we use them to change our lives. Stop waiting for someday. Someday is a myth. There is only today. Take the breath, make the plan, take the leap. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next deep dive.